Why did that sound so weird? I just drank out of my water bottle, but I'm like, that sounds weird through my headphones, because my headphones are connected to my microphone, and it's just, hello, my weebs, geeks, and LGBTQIA peeps. How are you guys doing today? Pretty good, pretty bad, maybe both? Can you be both? Maybe. I don't know. Okay, so we're here. We're gonna get through this chapter, and hopefully nothing bad happens in this chapter. I feel like Shay just gets thrown into trouble. And she's not even hanging with the wrong crowd. She's hanging with Peter Parker. He's like a superhero. You know, you're hanging out with the good guys, but you're dealing with a lot of bad. Make sure to go support the author, because we love authors in this community, and I hope you guys enjoy this fanfiction. We are both going in blind, unless you read ahead of me, because I probably should, but I don't read ahead, so there has been times where I've read this fanfiction and I go, what? Oh my gosh, this happened? Like when Lob was like, shot. I didn't know that was gonna happen, and I was like, what? Lob, no! And then, yeah, so we're going in blind. We're gonna see how this ends up. It's gonna be good, though. I'm a little scared. But so far, right now, we're in Peter's arms swinging through the city. So I think we're doing pretty good. We're doing pretty good, okay? Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see you at the end of it, and see you later.
Shay gripped her friend around the neck as they swung through the city.
Where am I dropping you off?
There. Shay pointed to the alley next to her apartment building. She could almost see her friend's confused face, but he dropped her down nonetheless. Take off your mask, Petey.
How do you...
You've got cameras in the suit, right? You told me about them after the first time. Peter seemed to stop himself from saying her name as he nodded and ripped off his mask. He tapped the button on his suit and it became baggy.
You've got that extra set of clothes still?
Shay snorted but nodded.
Of course. Can you, I don't know, toss them down here?
Shay nodded and hopped onto the old chair before getting onto the dumpster, pulling herself up before running up the few flights of stairs to her window. She pulled the key from her bag and unlocked the window, slipping into her apartment and out of view. Peter waited, and a moment later, a drawstring bag came flying towards his head. Peter grabbed it from the air, thank you, spidey senses, before moving behind the dumpster to change. He stuffed his suit into his bag and pulled it tightly closed. After throwing it over his shoulder, Peter slipped out of the alley and took a few steps before turning again and pushing open the doors to the lobby of his friend's apartment building.
Hey, Parker, what's up?
Hey, Lob. Peter grinned, giving a wave to the man at the front desk as he moved towards the elevator.
How are things going?
Good, Lob replied, giving a bright grin of his own. Or maybe that was just his resting face. He always seemed to be smiling.
My wife started to save a bit of money on the side. Wanted to save up enough to get a prosthetic for me one day.
Sounds great, Lob. If there's anything I can do to help, let me know, Peter said.
Thanks for the offer, Parker, but we'll be fine. I can tie a shoe with one hand now. I never would have learned that if it wasn't for this,
the man replied, waving his thumb proudly in the air. Peter forced a smile.
See you later, Lob. See ya, Parker.
Peter readjusted the bag over his shoulder as the elevator opened up for him. He stepped inside and jabbed the 5 button. The door shutter closed, and the elevator slowly began moving up. Peter could hear the whirl of the machine around him and swallowed. He had never particularly liked old elevators. He knew Shay didn't really either. It was one of the reasons she used the fire escape half the time. Peter stepped out of the elevator quickly and heard the doors close behind him. He let out a small breath he didn't know he was holding and made his way over to the first door. He knocked 3 times in rapid succession, before twice at a slower pace. The door swung open a moment later, revealing Shay's grinning face. "Hey Peter, come on, get in." Peter entered the apartment and heard his friend close the door behind him. Peter threw his bag onto the couch before turning to her and shoving his hands into the sweatpants he was wearing.
"Shay, what's going on with your hair?"
Shay tugged on the neat locks that framed her face before shrugging.
"I don't know." Okay, why don't you just tell me everything that happened?"
Shay nodded. "Take a seat then, Spidey boy, and get comfy. We be in for a ride." The girl moved to her small kitchen area and opened up a cupboard. It was the only one that wasn't dusty from disuse. Shay pulled down a large bag of cheese balls she had gotten from a dollar store the week before and tossed it to her friend. Peter caught it and ripped it open. "Thanks. You got it, Mr. Fast Metabolism." Peter rolled his eyes before gesturing to her.
"Tell me the story."
Okay, the galaxy-haired girl said. "So I was walking home when I heard a scream, as you do, you know." He nodded. "I went to the alley and saw a girl maybe a year older than us. I guess getting robbed by the woman and two men. They were gonna shoot her and I didn't see anyone else stepping in to help, so I just decided to do so myself. I stepped in and I was able to use my powers, the purple energy I mean, to stop them all and save her. She called the cops and you showed up."
"You controlled your powers?"
Peter asked, eyes widening before stars seemed to appear in them.
"Can you do it again?"
Shay glanced at him. "I don't know," she shrugged. "I don't really know what I did last time."
"Just try, please."
Yeah. Alice?" "Shay? Can you record this, please?" the girl requested. "And take notes of specific things I do. If this goes right, I want to know how to replicate it."
"You got it, Shay,"
Alice responded. Shay smiled at the response of her AI friend. "Here goes nothing," Shay said. She drew her hands back and willed for her powers to come out. A bright flash of purple energy lashed out. Shay let out a scream as both she and Peter fell to the ground. A moment later, the lights went out. The energy finally dissipated, leaving black marks on the walls it had struck with its ends. Shay moved to one and scrubbed at it. The black spot smudged. "It'll come out," she announced after a moment. Peter and Shay stood in the center of the room together and looked around. The window let the most light in the morning when the sun can shine through it, with all the lights off. "Alice, you still online?"
ALICE, experiencing a surge in power, rebooting systems.
A robotic voice that didn't sound at all like the Alice the teens knew and loved responded immediately. There was a pause and a sound of a distant static before the voice spoke again.
Main operating systems online, rebooting emotions programs.
Peter saw Shay chewing her bottom lip as she waited for her AI to come back online. He noticed that his friend did this often when she was nervous or thinking. Finally, a familiar voice with a British accent filled the room.
"What's up, homies?"
Shay and Peter looked at each other before they both dissolved into laughter.
"Alice!"
Shay gasped between giggles.
"Why are you talking like that?"
She wheezed.
"Homies?"
"Oh my god."
"I'm messing with you too, Shay."
Alice responded, and one could literally hear the smile in her voice.
"I know enough about the time to not talk like that."
"Please never do that again," Shay said.
"It was terrifying," Peter nodded.
"Noted."
"Did you get a video of the attempt before the power surged?" Shay asked.
"Sure did,"
Alice responded.
"It was stored away immediately."
"Can you put it in a sub-document of the purple energy item on the list?" the girl asked. She turned to her friend. "What should we call it?"
"How about, if it's a sub-document of an overarching topic of purple energy, let's name it No."
Shay's lips tilted upward as soon as the suggestion left his mouth. "Great idea," Shay grinned. "Incredibly detailed as well. I love it."
"I have my ways."
Shay laughed. Peter offered her a fist bump, which she of course returned. As their hands fell back to their sides, the lights flickered back to life. There was a crackling sound outside, and the muffled voice of Lob came through the virtually never-used PA system.
Sorry everyone for that interruption. We had a small surge of power. It's all fixed now. Once again, we apologize for the small inconvenience. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day.
The crackling returned as the PA turned off.
How did you get your hair like that? Peter questioned, changing topics abruptly. He leaned closer to his friend's face. And your eyes, they're amazing.
My eyes? She asked.
Shay quickly moved through her apartment into the bathroom.
She flicked the switch and waited as the lights above blinked to life before leaning in to look at herself in the mirror.
Shay had to admit, her hair looked pretty awesome. The purples and blues and pinks blended beautifully, creating a color scheme that reminded her of a galaxy. Her brand new superhero name, Supernova, now seemed even more appropriate. She turned her gaze from the colorful locks to her face itself. Her skin was flawless. Creepy flawless. No teenager should ever have skin this perfect. Her features were a tiny bit sharper than usual. Barely noticeable, but probably enough to fool a facial recognition scanner. She looked older, like a higher-up college student probably, at least to someone who didn't know what she looked like normally. Her powers knew what they were doing when they disguised her. No one would be able to recognize her or guess her actual age. She moved her gaze again until she was staring herself right in the eyes. Her eyes were beautiful. She had never thought much of her eyes. They had been something that other people in the world had. They were hers, sure, but they weren't something she had always thought made her special. She had her brain and her powers for that, but now, they were amazing. It was as if there was a literal galaxy inside of them. All sorts of colors, blues, greens, purples, pinks, whites, orange, swirled around one another. The galaxy in her eyes moved. Stars drifted through the iris. And she was mesmerized by the movement of the small bit of space that rested in her head.
Wow,
she breathed, barely noticing her friend watching her as he leaned against the doorway. They're breathtaking. Nice word usage, Peter said, smiling. Shay nodded subtly as she watched the light show in her eyes. Finally, she said a single word. Supernova. What? Peter furrowed his eyebrows as he looked at his friend. What are you talking about? That's what I told the girl my superhero name was. Supernova. That's a pretty damn awesome name, Shay, Peter said, his smile turning into a grin. Thanks, Spidey boy. You've got a nice space theme going, Peter said before he frowned. How did you get like that anyway? I just willed my powers to do something to disguise me, I guess, and they came up with this, Shay explained, gesturing to her appearance as she turned to lean against the counter and stare at her friend. They did a good job. I couldn't tell it was you until you specifically told me. Shay nodded before turning back to the mirror. What are you doing? Peter asked. He looked at her curiously. Gonna add one more thing, she said, narrowing her eyes to concentrate. If I can. Slowly, small dots on the skin along the top of her cheek and over her nose appeared, looking like freckles. She narrowed her eyes a bit more and let out a puff of air from her nose as she focused on the dots appearing. Finally, she relaxed and grinned. What'd you do? Can I see? Peter asked, trying to stand on the tips of his toes to see into the mirror and view her reflection. Shay turned to him with a satisfied smile. Star freckles, she said. It was true. She had managed to create a spray of freckles over her face. However, they weren't normal freckles. No. One could easily tell that the freckles were actually stars. They weren't her normal skin tone, but rather silver, gold, and a few colors that seemed to be in between. A few were larger than the others, making their star shape more apparent, while others looked like normal freckles without close inspection because they were so tiny. Whoa, Peter breathed out as his eyes scanned the new addition. He met her eyes with his own large brown doe ones and said, "This is so awesome, dude." Shay grinned and her cheeks turned a bit red. "Thanks." "Are you gonna stay like that?" Peter asked. "No," she responded immediately, shaking her head. "This is my superheroing look, if I end up doing that," she said. "Can you take a picture that I can use for reference if I practice the look?" Peter had his phone out already and snapped a photo of her a moment later. "Thanks again." She turned back to the mirror and tried to visualize her normal appearance. She felt her head begin to ache a bit, but continued to focus. Finally, Shay opened her eyes. She was back to normal. Her hair was its usual color, length, and was messy from the day. Her features weren't as sharpened anymore, and she looked her age again rather than a few years older. At least to someone who didn't know who she was and what defining features of her everyday self to look for in her hero self. The star freckles were gone and her skin was no longer creepily flawless. It had its normal marks and blemishes, unavoidable with teenage years. Her eyes were normal again. Shay sighed. "You know," Peter said from behind her, "you look awesome in your supernova look, but you look just as awesome as Shay." She felt her cheeks heat up and imagined them darkening, but turned and gave her friend a hug anyway. "Thanks, Peter." He said nothing in response, but he didn't really need to. "Cheese ball me." Peter responded without a word, simply tossing a cheese ball into the open mouth of his friend. "Thanks," she said, her voice muffled as she chewed the small snack. "The code word is Rochambeau, dig me? Rochambeau!" Both teens yelled out with the singers and the soundtrack. Peter grabbed his phone as it dinged before groaning. "What is it?" Shay asked, leaning closer to peer at the screen from over his shoulder. "May wants me home. She said I need to sleep because I haven't gotten enough the past 2 weeks. "Here," Shay said, grabbing the drawstring bag with his suit from beside her side of the couch and tossing it to him. Peter caught it with one hand as he typed a reply to his aunt with the other. "Thanks," the arch-eyed themed hero said as he stood and made his way to the bathroom. He emerged a moment later in his spider suit. The suit was loose around him, showing that it wasn't on yet. More importantly, though, it wasn't recording. "See you tomorrow, Shay?" "I'll text you," the girl said from the couch, waving him away. "Go see your aunt." "Got it." Peter slipped on the mask, still refraining from touching the button on the center of his chest. He made his way through the window and opted to crawl down the wall. Shay leaned out the opening and watched as her friend pressed the button, the suit fitting itself nicely around him. He didn't turn back to her again, giving a wave over his shoulder instead as he webbed himself up onto the building opposite to hers and swung away into the summer night. Shay sighed and plopped back onto the couch. She had an animatic to finish. Have you watched Epic, the movie?
Yes.
You know the scene where he's like, "You gonna cry to your flat face, mommy?"
I don't remember.
You don't remember? That's like the funniest part of the movie. Oh. Hi! Welcome to the end of the video. I didn't know I pressed record. Do you want to say hi? Just say hi. Just say hi again. Just say hi.
Hi.
Wow! He says hi! Look, I messed up the first 2 outros, and then I accidentally clicked record. I'm not even going to redo this one. If it's messed up, it's messed up. My cousin's in the room. I'm not going to say...
Hi.
This boy has been interrupting my recording this whole time. He was good at first. He was quiet. And then he just started talking, my recording thing has a timer. It goes 3, 2, 1. And every time it hit 1, it would just be, he would just say something. And now he's, oh my God! Don't. Go away! Go away! Go away! Walk into that corner. I will beat you with this pillow. All right. No, do not grab a pillow. Sit down. Sit. Stay. This has been a chaotic recording. My dog got attacked by a cat. I had to run out there and save him. My cousin is attacking me with a pillow. I'm going to end it here. This is a really good chapter. I feel like we're turning into little space freckles. Actually, little freckles doesn't have like anything related to the character, but it was star freckles. I was like, oh. But I really like how the story's going when she had the star freckles. I was like, yay! And the freckles are in the same place where I have freckles, so it's super cool. I was like, I can relate to this, except they're not cool stars, they're just regular dots. But you know, it was cool. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and my horrible soundtrack of Hamilton in that last part. The code word is rib. I messed it up. Okay. Yeah, that's all I have. Stay tuned for the next one. I'm not sure what the next video is gonna be. It might be Benny. It might be Sherlock Holmes. You never know. Have a nice day, night, or whenever you're watching this, and bye! You wanna say bye? Bye!